My name is Eric, and I never imagined I'd be telling a story like this. When you get married, you believe in love, in trust, you think you've found your partner for life. But I learned the hard way that the woman I loved had been betraying me behind my back. And when I finally confronted her, instead of remorse or even a simple apology, she tried to destroy me. Melissa and I had been together for years, and there was no denying she was beautiful. I fell for her charm, convinced we had what most would consider a solid marriage, at least from the outside looking in. More importantly, we had a child, someone who meant the world to both of us. Like any couple, we had our arguments, but I never thought they were out of the ordinary. Looking back, I can see how many red flags I ignored. I brushed them aside, refusing to admit that something was wrong. Even in the early days of our marriage, Melissa never truly valued my opinions. She had a habit of dismissing my words, cutting me off mid-sentence as if what I said didn't matter. The disrespect was blatant, but I convinced myself it wasn't a big deal. Then came the secrecy. The phone she once left lying around the house was suddenly glued to her hand. She started angling the screen away from me, stepping outside to take calls, and if I ever asked who she was talking to, she'd wave it off with vague answers like, "Just a friend." The harder I tried to reconnect with her, the further she pulled away. She started going out more, staying out late, and sometimes not even bothering to come home. Her excuses were flimsy at best, and none of it made sense. I had been raised in a single-parent home, and if there was one thing I had promised myself, it was that my child would never have to go through that. I wanted my son to grow up in a home where his parents loved each other, where he didn't have to wake up one day and realize they were just going through the motions. So I held back. I didn't want to push too hard. I hoped things would get better on their own. But instead of improving, everything spiraled downhill. Melissa barely acknowledged me anymore. It was like I was just another object in the house, something to be overlooked and forgotten. No matter how much effort I put in, she kept slipping further away. Then one night she made a mistake. She left her phone on the couch when she rushed to the bedroom to grab something. It was locked, but as I glanced at the screen, a notification popped up and disappeared just as quickly. A flirty message from an unsaved number. I didn't have time to see more, but deep down I already knew the truth. That one brief glimpse confirmed everything my gut had been telling me. I couldn't just sit around and wait for more signs. I had a job, responsibilities, and I couldn't spend my days following her around. But I also couldn't ignore that sinking feeling in my stomach. That's when I made a choice. I hired a private investigator. A friend of mine had used one before and swore they could uncover things an average person would never even think to look for. If Melissa was being unfaithful, I needed undeniable proof, something she couldn't talk her way out of. The investigator wasted no time. He tracked where she went, how long she stayed, and who she was meeting. He wasn't just looking for random encounters. He was piecing together a pattern, mapping out her hidden life. He took photos, recorded videos, and documented every suspicious detail. While he worked behind the scenes, I had to act like nothing was wrong. Every night, I laid beside her, knowing there was a chance she had just come from another man's arms. The waiting was unbearable. Then, one evening, I met up with the investigator. He didn't say much, he just handed me a folder. As I flipped through the pages, my stomach dropped. My life as I knew it was over. Melissa's actions went beyond infidelity. This wasn't just a mistake or bad judgment. She had been involved with multiple influential people in ways that went far beyond a typical affair. Some of these men had families of their own. She met them in hotels, in private residences, in places no married woman should ever be. The photos were bad. The videos were worse. Intimate moments in cars, dimly lit lounges, hotel lobbies. It was all there. My mind raced with questions. Was this about money? Status? Some kind of thrill? I had spent years working tirelessly to provide a stable, comfortable home for our family. And yet, it still hadn't been enough. The woman I had trusted, the woman I had built a life with, wasn't real. That night, I sat in the living room, waiting for Melissa to come home. My heart pounded, not from anger, but from disbelief. I had the evidence, proof she couldn't deny. And now I needed to hear her say it. I wasn't expecting redemption. I wasn't expecting tears, but I thought she'd at least have the decency to admit what she had done. When she walked in, I stood up and faced her, keeping my voice steady. "We need to talk." Her expression flickered. I told her I knew everything, that her secret wasn't a secret anymore. For a split second, she froze. Then she laughed. Before I could even process what was happening, she flipped the entire situation on me. She got angry, furious even, her voice rising as she shouted, "You've been controlling me for years. You never let me have a life. You track where I go. You don't trust me. And now you're accusing me of cheating." I was stunned. This wasn't a defense, it was an attack. Before I could say a word, she rushed into the kitchen, grabbed something from a drawer, and suddenly hurt herself in a way that left me completely stunned. I stood there, frozen. She let out a blood-curdling scream, crumpling to the floor as if I had just attacked her. My mind couldn't process what I was seeing. She held onto her arm, tears rolling down her face, looking at me as if I was some kind of threat. Her fear wasn't real, but she made it look convincing. Then, she grabbed her phone. "Help! My husband lost control. I don't feel safe." Her voice shook with desperation. I took a step back, my hands up, my breath caught in my throat. This was a setup, a trap. I reached for my phone and started recording. Melissa's eyes darted to the screen, and her expression twisted. "Who are you texting?" she snapped. I didn't answer. Her gaze hardened. In a cold, steady voice, she whispered, "Nothing will save you from this. I'll make sure you suffer until you die." A few minutes later, emergency lights flashed outside the house. Officers quickly entered, giving me firm commands to cooperate. Melissa sat sobbing in the corner, shaking as she pointed at me. "He snapped," she whimpered. "I just wanted to go out with my friends, and he lost it." I tried to speak, but what could I say? A man defending himself against a crying, injured woman. It didn't matter that I had never laid a hand on her. It didn't matter that I had proof. At that moment, I was the monster. They cuffed me, shoved me into the back of a police car. Sitting in that station, handcuffed to a bench, everything sank in. She had planned this. The affairs, the accusations, the injuries, it was all part of a calculated move. And she wasn't done yet. The next morning, my lawyer walked in holding a stack of papers. Divorce papers. Melissa wasn't just trying to ruin my name. She wanted everything. Our house, our assets, and worst of all, full custody of our child. She thought she had one. But she didn't know I had an SD card. Inside it was everything, the videos, the photos, the recording from the night before. The proof that she had set me up. She wanted a war? She was about to get one. Those files were the very thing that would bring her downfall. I handed everything over to my lawyer. If Melissa thought she could twist the law to her advantage, she was about to get a brutal reality check. The fallout was immediate. As soon as law enforcement reviewed the evidence, her entire story crumbled. The same officers who had looked at me with suspicion now saw her for what she really was. A fraud, a manipulator, someone who had wasted their time with a false report. And the best part? The powerful men she had been sleeping with, the ones who thought they were untouchable, were now scrambling. If this got out, their lives, their reputations, their families, everything they had built, would be ruined. Melissa wasn't just losing the divorce. She was about to lose everything. I can't even begin to explain the relief I felt when the police officially cleared me of all charges. When the truth finally came to light, it was Melissa who had to deal with the consequences. Then, my lawyer sat me down and brought up something I hadn't even considered. "Eric, you have every right to sue her for what she put you through." At first, I hesitated. But then I thought about it. How she had lied to the police, tried to have me arrested, and turned everyone I knew against me. She didn't just cheat. She didn't just betray our marriage. She tried to bury me. That's when I knew she had to face the full force of what she had done. With the mountain of evidence I had, filing a case against her was easy. But before I could even take that step, Melissa was arrested. She was charged with filing a false police report and obstruction of justice. The very legal system she had tried to use against me had now turned on her, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. I didn't have to say a word. I didn't have to lift a finger. This was karma. And the moment Melissa's name got dragged into a legal scandal, all those men she had been sneaking around with, they cut ties with her immediately. None of them wanted to be associated with a woman facing criminal charges. She thought she had options, but in reality, she had only ever been a disposable secret to them. Then came the divorce. Melissa truly believed she would walk away with everything. Our house, my savings, even my business assets. She was convinced she could ruin me financially and start fresh with a comfortable payout. But the court saw right through her. Not only did she lose the case, but she was also ordered to pay damages and legal fees for the chaos she had caused. Instead of leaving our marriage wealthy, she walked away drowning in debt. But the biggest blow? Custody. She fought for full custody, claiming I was dangerous and unfit to be a father. But by then, her lies had already been exposed, and the judge didn't buy a single word. In the end, I was granted full custody of our child, and she was given only limited, supervised visits, if that. The woman who had tried to take my son away from me was now the one being told when and where she could see him, if she was even allowed to at all. And then, reality hit her hard. She faced legal consequences. It wasn't a long-term sentence, but it was enough for her to understand that choices have repercussions. And by the time she got out, she had nothing. No money, no powerful connections, no way to rebuild the life she once had. The legal fees alone left her struggling just to afford the basics. The best part? I didn't have to destroy her. She did it all to herself. It's crazy to think about how close I was to losing everything. If I had let my emotions take over, if I had reacted out of anger instead of strategy, I could have ended up in jail, broke, and without my child. At first, staying calm felt like the hardest thing to do. But looking back, I realized that if I had stayed quiet any longer, Melissa would have buried me completely. The truth is, some people don't just want to hurt you. They want to destroy you. And if you give them the chance, they will. I know some of you might be wondering, why didn't I leave sooner? The answer is simple: I loved her. I believed in our family. And when you have a child with someone, you don't just walk away over suspicions. But love shouldn't make you blind. And loyalty should never be one-sided. I learned the hard way that the person you trust the most can also be the one secretly plotting your downfall. That's why you have to pay attention, not just to words, but to actions. If someone constantly disrespects you, lies to you, or makes you feel crazy for questioning things, chances are you're not the problem. At the end of the day, I didn't win because I was lucky. I won because I kept my head down, gathered proof, and played the long game. Melissa thought she could manipulate the system, but karma had other plans. She thought she could take everything from me, but in the end, she lost it all. And there is nothing more freeing than knowing that the person who tried to destroy you no longer has any power over you. So, let me ask you, if you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Would you have fought back the way I did? Or would you have handled it differently? Let me know in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, if you believe in justice and standing up for yourself, make sure to like and share this video. You never know who might need to hear this today. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like.